Hello and welcome to the Third Advent YouTube channel. We are in a new section called Post-millennial Earth Science and Geology, and these are theories that I've come up with autodidactically by looking at the world today and trusting what my eyes show me, what I think is practical and logical, and trying to discover what created the scene in our realm today, how it is no longer like Luke chapter 3 verse 5, and the golden age, I believe, was buried. And this also might explain flood theory, so they might link or couple up together. It all derives from the seas returning after the 1,000 years ended, so that's where we're starting. Okay, let's begin. So we're looking at an app where the earth can show how the sea can be lowered and give us an idea of the landscape of the ocean today. It's called, I believe, Elevation Earth or Earth Elevation app. It's only a couple dollars on Amazon Prime. Nice little app there. And what I'm trying to do is build credibility for my post-millennial deluge theory, which basically, as I explained in my last few videos, is that the seas returned after the 1,000 years of Christ's reign, and I think it caused a lot of changes to the land formations, as well as allowed a historical reset to take place and change the narrative what the last 1,000 years transpired and could be hidden from man, which was the second advent, or once again the 1,000-year reign of Christ, described 6 times in Revelation chapter 20 verses 2 through 7. So we're just going to put on our glasses, nerd out a little bit, look at small-scale dry land formations that look like the same type of large-scale formations that we see at the bottom of the ocean today. And trusting this information is correct, we're trying to deduce how and what caused these geological formations, either on a small scale, large scale on dry land, or in the large scale of the bottom of the ocean. And what I am theorizing is that 70% of the earth sank. It was all one flat plain. You can see in Luke 3:5, and then the description of Revelation chapters talk about how, in 16 specifically, how the islands fled away and the mountains weren't found. All the cities fell, so everything got flattened and cleansed for the millennial kingdom, or the beloved city to come down, or that great city, New Jerusalem, to come down and rule and reign on a cleansed new heaven, new earth, which I know most of my brothers and sisters will disagree with. They think that's going to happen after the third advent. But in my humble opinion, the new heaven, new earth dematerialize in Revelation 20 verses 11 through 15, and we spend eternal time in the beloved city, or the holy city of Jerusalem, in the kingdom of heaven, God, its eternal state, after the 7,000th year has ended, which I believe here, and we are ending the timeline for the 360 theoretical little season period. Okay, moving on. So this is where I form my idea and my hypothesis of what happened. As again, I have said, the seas possibly return, all theoretical, and tectonic subsidence took place on 70% of the Earth's surface, sinking down to the average ocean depth of 12,000 feet, as Alexis tells us that that's the average depth, so I might be incorrect on that information. And what happened is that tectonic subsidence caused the dry land that did not subside to have an underground invasion, or underground material come and bury it, or the golden age was buried through mud, claystone, shellstone, limestone, sandstone, dirt, lava. Eruptions were going off everywhere. Water was coming up from the ground. These deep, I believe, were released from the new heaven, new earth, and it just covered everything. I am not trying to say that the Lord broke his word and flooded the earth and destroyed all of mankind except for 8 and Noah's Ark. That's not what I'm saying, but I do believe it was a land, earth shattering, changing event that changed the landscape we see today. So the land that did not subsided, remained, and that area got covered, and it was changed forever. And these eruptions and water flows and debris depositing, although that was not under ocean water now, they had to dig out, and maybe that's what they did for the last few hundred years before we reached the 1800s. I'm theorizing this started somewhere around 1665 AD. The seas started resurfacing, and these geological catastrophes started happening. And We look at a lot of old pictures today where they had to bury these cities out that were just above sea level today, mean sea level. So that might have been the original plane of where the Golden Age existed, and then everything else above that was built recently and quickly over a 360-year period. And of course, most of the mountains and deserts were quickly formed, maybe over 100 years, and that's why when we look at any type of diagram that shows charts of population growth, it really is low and then all of a sudden spikes from in the 1800s. So maybe this was near or close to a near extinction level event. Man had kind of had to dig himself out. The powers that ought not be were able to grab the reins of indoctrination and education and explain what they wanted you to believe happened when really they're covering up the second advent. Okay, so we're looking at some pictures here of dry land of Thailand. And these little gullies and ravines were created by subsidence and erosion. And we're looking at the formations of what the arrows are pointing to, and the square boxes showing that land did not subside. Has the same type of formation as the Aleutian Islands that we're looking at, and the water being removed in the seafloor in that area, which caused a land bridge, well, if you will. So that unsubsided land there, or excuse me, non-subsided land there, created the wall. On a larger scale, we see the formation that matches on a smaller scale on dry earth, land above sea, same type of formations, whether they look like hoodoos or spires coming up from the ground or plateaus in the dry Thailand example of subsidence and water erosion. We're seeing the same thing on the ocean floor and this land bridge that is mostly submerged, but covers from Alaska, Aleutian Islands, all the way to, I believe it would be Russia. So I covered this in my last video, but unfortunately there was a technical difficulty that I don't know what happened, and it's not until 7 minutes later, and I think most people aren't going to be able to find it, so I'm just bringing this information forward again. So the red arrows point to, in the pictures, as you can see, towards the land that did not subside by water flowing through, and it was soft and shaped into those conditions due to water flow and washout. And you see the same thing in the ocean basins today, just on a larger scale compared to the dry land scale. And then you look at a lot of the national parks today, we see these formations in much grander size. So what I'm suggesting again is that if we have proof on dry land of subsidence and ground sinking, as well as water flowing through there and washing it out, and then we see the same geological formations at a much larger scale in our ocean floors and plateaus today, then we have ground spires that did not subside and were washed out and formed into these towers that we also see in national parks and smaller scale areas that were washed out. So that's the idea. So I wrote there, subsidence and water erosion examples in Thailand mirror the ocean floor's geological formations. Original topographical surface sank 70% and subsided, creating today's sea basin. So here's another example of a gully being created in that big image there to the left of your screen, as well as the same geological formations of plateaus, towers, and subsided ground, non-subsided ground, as well as complete water washout. So this had water washout. It eroded the land as well as ground sank, and we have these formations, and these towers and plateaus were created because they were sculpted by the erosion, but they were also part of the original land surface. And again, I'm showing that same Aleutians Island picture from that app where the water is drained, or we can at least see through it and understand what the ocean floor bottom looks like, and see the exact same formation and the bottom of the sea that we know caused this on the top of the earth. So can we put two and two together and say, well, if this happened on the surface of the earth and land sank and got washed out as it flowed over like Niagara Falls, washing everything out and went to the lowest spot, creating these beautiful geological towers and formations and plateaus and spires, if you'd like to call them that, then you see the same thing at the bottom of the ocean. Then we can consider that this might have been the same event, but at a much larger scale. So that's the evidence I'm bringing forth, and these pictures, the comparison of geological formations of the Pacific floor and terrestrial erosion or gullies. So they match. And can we put these two examples together and consider this is what really caused this formation on the face of the earth, and it's not really merging together or separating. It's really tectonic subsidence as well as washout from water coming up to the face of the earth from underground chambers and aquifers, and carving all this out very quickly within the last, believe it or not, I know it's going to be a shock to the mind and sound ridiculous, but within the 1600s of the Gregorian calendar. We're now investigating the seafloor around the continental shelf drop of Newfoundland, where the Titanic unfortunately sank. And we're using the Earth Elevation app once again to let us get an idea from a topographical angle of what the seafloor looks like. And again, I'm bringing to your attention that we see the same kind of formation at the bottom of the sea that we see on dry land, as well as exact formations on the ocean floor. We're seeing also on the app where we're looking at Newfoundland and where that continental shelf happens, it just completely is cleaved and drops. And this is what happens in subsided ground areas, either slopes down or completely is fractured and falls dramatically, leaving these type of cliffside, whether it's on a seascape or in a park and mountain range all over the face of God's green earth here. And we're seeing these type of formations that are sculpted by washout and massive water deluge, carving out the area and carrying the sediment with it downstream, because a lot of what came up from the crust and buried, theoretically, I'm suggesting buried the old Golden Age landscape and built it up thousands of feet, was sediment that could be easily washed out by water, eroded quickly by water and rain, as well as it solidifies quickly, so the geology can sit there and tell you it took millions and billions of years to create these formations, but really sandstone, limestone, and shale, excluding granite, shaped and carved out very quickly over a short period of time, maybe 360 years opposed to 360 million years like we're told. So again, digressing back to the fracture points or these cliff sides where the seafloor just all of a sudden drops down tens of 10,000, 12,000 feet on you, is indication of subsidence, not ground continental lifting up, but ground sinking. And that's what nature shows us in many of these illustrations, where again, washout and ground sinking causes these formations we see in the bottom of the ocean as well as on dry land. So I'm suggesting that water was flowing all over, coming up all over, and just carving these areas out and ending up flowing to the lowest point. And that could be to the Gulf in North America or the east or west coast. As we know, the Midwest and West elevation slope downward from the eastward direct, from west to east. And as you go into California on the Pacific side, it drops dramatically in elevation too. So that might have been a high point for America, where everything was just kind of flowing downhill from that point and ended up either in the Gulfs of Mexico, the Gulf of California, and the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans and the surrounding water bodies that eventually formed. In the Great Lakes, a lot of old maps show that they weren't there, and then in the 1700s, other maps will show the Great Lakes appeared, which seems to be maybe from a freshwater aquifer opposed to one that was briny. And then with the Arc of Triumph or the Milky Way there that I discussed, it's nowhere mentioned. This beautiful heavenly body is nowhere mentioned in the older New Testament, the King James Bible, and I'm wondering why. So I think that is a sign showing that the second coming of Jesus Christ has been fulfilled. Clouds of heaven, lights which are heavenly stars that God created to possibly illuminate in water, electrically or with fire, I'm not sure. And we're also looking at these spires in the desert location here, or these towers, and I'm suggesting that's the same original ground surface that got eroded away but wasn't completely washed out and formed these beautiful spires and towers that we see in these parks today. And the ground was maybe a little higher than what the top one is showing there, and, or if you will, the 10th floor. And all that ground beneath it, which is sand now, was all washed out. And that's all that was left and deposited from the washout after it became dormant. All right, thanks for listening. Many more videos to come. Remember, this is all theory. Pray about these things, that I don't say anything false or untrue. And we're just trying to understand the world we live in today through sinners' eyes. God bless and thank you.